What's up, y'all? Welcome on into 10 at 3. It's 10 at 3 time in Tennessee. How are ya? Hope you're well. Hope you're doing all right on this Tuesday. What is it? Tuesday, December 2nd, 2025. How's your world? How's your day? Hopefully you're one more day removed from Tennessee's debacle there Saturday against Vanderbilt at Neyland Stadium. And here's a little inside baseball for you. Tuesdays can be a little bit hectic at the beginning. And the reason for that is structural. Tuesday, normally, we go live right here at 3 o'clock, right? So you get in here well before the show, you're chilling, you're ready to roll. Tuesday's our sports meeting at 2:30, and it lasts usually about half an hour, and then the show starts at 3. So it's like a scramble drill. It is like everybody get up, get set, go. And that may or may not have been why we played you elevator music today. With Lord of the Streams, Tom Barclay, and Miss Shelby over there today. How are we?
Oh, we're doing great over here. We're doing great. How you doing?
I'm doing all right. Actually, that was a little more easy listening, a little more Enya than we normally are. I think we normally have more of a what you would perhaps call an urban feel to our music, a modern, Southern hip hop kind of thing that we got going on there with our intro, the chant beat, all that. Today we're just, hey guys, listen, it was a tough weekend.
We're taking it easy today.
It was a tough weekend, okay? It was a tough weekend right now. Tennessee football didn't go the way that everybody wanted it to go there to end the season. Obviously, we talked about that a lot yesterday, and we'll talk about it a lot more this week. Tennessee basketball is going to play at Syracuse tonight, although they're buried in snow up there, what it looks like. My former coworker, Grant Ramey, landed at the Syracuse airport today and took a picture outside of it, and it is it's white. It's white. It's whiter than my forehead is under these lights. That's how white it is in Syracuse right now.
Really?
Yes. That is exactly how white. It's more, you thought this is as white as it gets? No. The ground outside Syracuse, New York right now, even whiter. Reminded me a couple years ago when Tennessee played at UConn around this time of year, men's hoops, and got up there and there was like snow drifts the size of like the car piled on the sides of the road, and you're like, people live here? This is a place where humans congregate in mass and live and work and raise children and do things. They go outside in this. What is wrong with people?
Some people are just built different,
Apparently, under 50 degrees, I cry a little bit inside.
Have you ever lived anywhere where it's extremely cold?
This is as far north as I ever have lived or would live. Yes, and fun fact, my wife lived in D.C. for years, including for 4 years that we were together. She had a job up there. And I would be up there in the summer, not in the winter. A couple times in the winter, I was like, no. Had family that used to live in Potsdam, New York, way upstate there.
Yeah.
You could throw a rock and hit Canada if you have a strong enough arm.
Well, speaking of Canada, I've been to Toronto. I know what lake effect snow feels like. It is not fun during the winter.
Covered the NCAA tournament in Chicago, and listen, Cubs fan for life, my whole family, everybody, but it's in the winter, it's miserable. Every coffee should be an Irish coffee. It needs to be to go outside and tolerate that. It is that wind coming in through the buildings. Worst.
The worst was working outside on a flight line in the middle of Rapid City, South Dakota.
That would do it.
In the midst of winter.
That would do it.
The snow drift. It's just wind and snow. That's all it is.
It also
wide open space for wind. It's terrible.
I'm sure doing with your background, you are very well aware of Leavenworth. Not because you have a criminal background, but you have a military background. So
I used to drive by there quite a few times on my way back and forth between South Dakota and Missouri.
And a couple of my cousins have been stationed there, not for crimes they've committed, but for their military service. They've been there. Salute to the service there. No dishonorable discharges in our crew. Thank you. Just want to verify that. They're like, what were they doing in Leavenworth? Working, not court-ordered working. They were working. They were not incarcerated. But they lived there. And in the winter, the calls that I would get from them, and these are like grizzled military dudes, and just wanting to cry. I don't want to go outside.
If you're not used to it, and I know there's a lot of folks in the military from the southeast in particular, and it'll change your perspective on what cold is for sure.
It is miserable. I just
awful
can't.
sometimes.
Anything less than 50 degrees, can't do it.
driving through Kansas down I-70 on a winter day, trying to get to Colorado while it's snowing. It just whites everything out. It's terrible.
Yeah, it's in the second reference, and this will transition us to Tennessee sports, actually, believe it or not. We will get there. We'll get there. Because I just mentioned my former coworker, Grant Ramey. He's still one of my favorite people in the world and in our business especially. And he and I were coworkers for years, and we went to cover the Tennessee at Kansas basketball game. And when we get there, he did not tell me beforehand that he rented, this is like January in Kansas, a Wrangler. And then not
known for their insulation.
And no. Then he put the top down because he knows how much I hate the cold. He put the top down and basically hid some of the components that you need to tie it back up.
Yeah.
And was like, bundle up, bud. Here we go down the highway. So we're going from Kansas City to Lawrence at night, January in Kansas, top down on a Wrangler. Not what I would call fun.
What would you call fun? Weather-wise,
anything above 60 is good. I can't be too hot. Like famous last words, but I'm a former baseball player. People say you can put on enough clothes. I say you can drink enough water.
I'd rather be cold than hot, to be honest with you.
I can't. And I fight this with my wife all the time because she loves sweater season, and I just hate it. I wake up in the morning it's like a combination of angry and sad. Like every morning I wake up and I'm like, even though I'm inside this central heat and air, I know that just outside these walls of this house built in 1890 by General Custer is frigid weather. And it just gets in the bones. It makes me upset. It gets dark too early. At least if there's snow on the ground, that's nice to look at. And I like the way winter smells. But because just outside, it smells different. It does. It smells different outside.
It smells like a campfire out there.
And I can hardly smell anything, but I can smell that. So I know that it's nice. And it's just different. And so I love that part of it. What I don't love at all is everything else about it. Like
snow,
Christmas.
cold,
I mean, Christmas
ice.
is nice, like whatever, but I just can't. Like this is as far. You would have to at least double my salary, maybe more, to get me to live 1 degree north of where I am now. Because even in Kentucky in the winter, my family up there, my mom's family are Eastern Kentucky people. It's a tundra. It's miserable. And then Ohio, oh God, no. It's just gray and cold, and it sucks for like 4 or 5 months. It just does. It sucks. You don't want to go outside. You don't want to, and then you're like, and especially if you're in a city, you're walking around and it's cold outside, right? So you got to bundle up and wear a jacket. But you're walking, so you start to get a little bit of a sweat. Then you walk up to wherever you're going, a bar or a church, probably more of a bar in my case, and you got to go inside and you got to go hang up a coat. Because inside it's like 1,000 degrees and you're sweating, but you're cold. And why?
Shelly,
What is the
take
point?
On this?
Did we not in this country? I do believe we fought many wars in order to live free, happy lives, and we thank everyone who helped us do that. Thank you. But I don't think that the reward for that should be walking around cold and sweating at the same time. I just don't believe it. I don't believe in it.
So
I don't like it.
No one here's a cold person then, for the most part.
No, I can't. Like it's under.
Doesn't love the snow.
At least in the snow, it's there.
You like that first
It's
snow,
pretty to look at, but it's like I don't like to go.
Messes with the roads.
I like the summer. I like to work in my yard. I grow lots of, like, everyone who really knows me knows that I grow all kinds of, like 20 kinds of roses in the yard, all kinds of trees, and tomatoes, peppers, all the berries, everything. Like I like to grow stuff, and all legal, and
nice disclaimer.
All legal, and you can't, in the winter I got to take all my stuff inside in the greenhouses, and I just don't like it. Point being, I like covering basketball more than I like covering football, but I am a baseball guy, and early season baseball, like college baseball starting in February, it's like, what is this? But I like, the warmer the better is what I'm saying. The warmer the better. And I know you think this is a, I'm not a small guy, 6'1", covered in a beard, haven't seen my face I think I've seen my actual face once in about 25 years, and that was for charity. My wife's never seen it. We've known each other for like 12, 13 years. So you would think, like, this guy can do cold, right? Grew up in and around a farm, big guy with a beard. No, I cannot. I cry in cold weather. I can't do it. I don't like it. I cry inside, sometimes outside. That is what it is. We got a lot to discuss, though, about, remember I was bringing it back. I was segueing with talk about driving with Grant Ramey in a top-down, I think Mike Wilson was with us too, in a top-down Jeep Wrangler covering Tennessee basketball.
Yeah.
And Tennessee basketball is something we're going to discuss after we get a little bit more football discussion out of the way. By the way, Josh Heupel says he's not going to Penn State. That happened it happened just after we got off the air yesterday.
Yeah.
It's
probably good to squelch those rumors almost immediately if they start making their rounds and you have no intention of doing so, right?
Yeah, but I don't like that it comes out like 5 minutes or so after we're done.
It had been circulating for at least a couple of days, right?
But I didn't like that it was that it came out the report that he wasn't going to do it.
Yeah.
I mean, and hats off to On Three's Chris Lowe. The guy's been. I mean, he's one of the best in the business, worked at ESPN for years before that's a Tennessean.
Mm-hmm. And
I joke with him all the time that I began my career getting my tail kicked by him, and 25 years later, here I am getting my tail kicked by him. So it's like he's like Wile E. Coyote with the Road Runner, basically. He's just one of the best in the business and one of the best people too. But he got it first, I believe, yesterday, and the rest of us then confirmed it, that he got from Heupel that Heupel said, I'm not interested in going to Penn State. I'm not a candidate for that job. His direct quote is, I wouldn't not want low expectations. That's part of why I'm here. We'll win big here. That was his quote. So the good news is that relays, first off, I think that Tennessee, unless something crazy happens, is not getting into the coaching market in a year where I think it's a really bad year to do that. Like Kentucky going into it like yesterday, whew. Good luck with that. Good luck with that. And even, Penn State tried to get ahead of the curve, got that vacancy months ago. And who's Penn State's coach right now? You ever heard of him? You haven't, because he doesn't exist. No one. That's his name, no one. They're still looking. And there's words that they're talking to, Kalani Sitake over there at BYU, and that would be a great hire, I think, if they could do that. Be outside of the box and a very good hire. One of the guys who I think could be worth the wait. But, I mean, right now, Auburn, which in many ways is, if it's run well, right there, it's a peer institution for Tennessee athletically, more or less, right? Like Tennessee likes to think of itself as it's a little bit better than that, but you're not apples and oranges, right? Auburn and Tennessee are both they're around the same level, and they hired the coach at USF, right? That's what they were able to go get. Florida, which would make anyone's list of the best 5 or 10 jobs in this country for football, got the head coach at Tulane. That's what. And they might win. I'm not saying you can't. Hey, guy by the name of Mike Krzyzewski came from Army, I believe, to Duke. That worked out. I mean, you can go. It doesn't matter where you come from. You can coach. But this is about the level of people that were being hired right now. Lane Kiffin was able to get the gross domestic product of a small country. He's never won a national championship. So, I mean, that was the top end of the market. That was the number one with a bullet. Everybody's list. They were fighting for him, like he was, like the last piece of pizza at a college party, 3:00 in the morning. Everybody's sitting there. There's one more piece left. If I hurry up and eat this piece, I can get that one. And then you're wrestling over it. Everybody's hungry. That's what Lane Kiffin was, and he is a really good football coach, brilliant offensive football coach. But then there's the risks associated with him, which we all know, and also. He's not won a title, not an SEC title, not a national title as a head coach. He's done really good work at Ole Miss, but that was number one. And if LSU is in the market for a coach, you know what LSU is probably going to get if it wants? The number one target. Is what it is. You got to accept that. And so this is not a time. You can say whatever you want about the frustration with this season. And if you want to know where I stand exactly on that, we spoke about that for an hour, full stop, a full hour yesterday of just that. So if you really want to go back and get that, you can go get that there. But the Cliff's Notes were that most of that was understandable, at least in my opinion, until that Vandy game, and then that changes things. And that did reach a point where I think some people fairly said, well, Wes, you're late to the party on this. And I said, no, I'm not. And I'll tell you why I'm not. Because of those injuries at premium defensive positions, Tennessee, despite all that, was basically a made field goal from being going into the last game of the season, one win away from being in the college football playoff for 2 consecutive seasons. So I'm not going to sit here and say full-on disaster when you deal with everything they dealt with, some of those premium defensive losses that they had, which, hey, injuries are football, not whatever. But 2 corners, 2 really good corners, that's a lot. Your best linebacker for part of the year, that's a lot. Your defensive lineman hurt throughout the year, these aren't small things. The Boo Carter situation, even if it's partly Tennessee's own fault, and it is, all of that together, Tennessee, if you make a field goal, or if you just make a play against Oklahoma, you're going into the Vanderbilt game 1 win away from being in the college football playoff for 2 consecutive years. So I'm not going to sit here and say, burn the thing to the ground. And if you think that's your solution to that, I can't say you're wrong. I think you're wrong. Now, what that Vanderbilt game did, they got embarrassed down the stretch, so that changes the equation. If you're on the fence about certain things, well, that ought to make your decision a little easier about changes that have to be made, but not at the top. Not at the top, not yet. Do it again next season. We might be having an uncomfortable conversation here. Not that this is a comfortable one, but an even more uncomfortable one for the man at the top. But you got to change some stuff. We talked about it yesterday. But you don't, this is not the time or the place to do that. And generally speaking, I think something that you need to do tomorrow is something you need to do today. But when you're talking about this much money and this much risk, you get to the risk-reward calculus, which I also believe in. So it's a sliding scale. And there's no hard and fast, this is this and this is that, that is that. No, that's not how the world works. It's just not most of the time. So that did change some things, but I don't think it said just burn everything down. What I hope for Tennessee's sake that it is a realization that between the coaches and the players and whoever it takes, they can't do that on defense again. But I think Heupel staying at Tennessee right now, there's no sure things, but I think that's probably the best case scenario for Tennessee is to just you hire a man to do a job, let him do a job. It's just words, and actions mean more than words. We all know that. But him saying, again, that he fully understands how unacceptable that was. He understands what the expectations are here. He understands these things. And so, okay, you've acknowledged that. We've acknowledged that you've acknowledged it. So go fix it. Go fix it. There's more reasons to trust you than not trust you the past 5 years. But you got to go fix this. And if you don't, we all know how this ends. And if you don't, I'm sorry. but I'll tell you how it ends. If you don't fix that defense, I'll tell you how it ends. I mean, financially for you, it still ends great because you'd get a great buyout. Nobody's going to cry for you on that front. But not going to be fun for your kids in school. Not going to be fun for your wife walking around during the day and having people say things when she's walking by, and you know what I mean? Like it's not the most pleasant experience, even if you're doing just fine financially, no matter what. Right? You could take half of what you have, waste it in some crypto scam, and you're still set for life. Your kids are still going to have a really good life unless they're very dumb. So, I mean, it's good that he understands this or claims to, Now you got to put it in practice. With signing day coming up, and we'll have a bunch of stuff on that tomorrow, obviously. Tennessee, again, right there around top 10 class, but signing classes, those rankings matter, but not as much as they used to, because now you've got the mass exodus of players and the mass introduction of players every year from the portal. So it's people are sitting there. You can say, well, look at all these classes that you've stacked, and that used to be what it was, right? Go stack top 10 classes with some top fives in there. And then you might not win a natty, but you can compete for one. You're right there in the mix. Look, you're stacking all this talent. That's not everything anymore. Like it's still a part of it, but it's hard to develop guys because this is a win now thing. And if you don't play people, they're going to leave. Most of the time, at least, they're going to leave. So you have to it's hard to get as many guys where it's like, you know what? I'm going to redshirt you for a couple of years, redshirt for you for a year, play a little bit as a redshirt freshman. By that third year, this is a good-looking football player. You can still do that sometimes if the player and his family have the right character for it. But a lot of times now, it's, I want to play. And if I'm not going to play, you're going to pay me more than this to sit, or I'll go somewhere else. Because somebody else somewhere is just as desperate as they are here, and they're going to want to upgrade. They feel like Tennessee might be one to upgrade from a player, but that player would be an upgrade for somebody else who's pretty good because of the system or the desperation or what their roster situation is like. So then you're in a position of, okay, I kind of need to upgrade from this guy, but I need to keep him too, because what if the guy I bring in isn't as good as I thought or he gets hurt? There's a million things now. There's a reason why these programs have general managers, and I don't think you have to have the title of general manager to be one. So I'm not just going to blanket policy say, well, they don't have one, so that's bad. I think you'd rather have one than not. But if you have someone or a committee of people who do that anyway, that's fine. Just you have to get that done. And so this signing day stuff does matter. It matters, but it's not what it was. It's a part of the equation now. It's a smaller part of the book. So now you got to manage all this while at the same time figuring out what you want to do with your staff. While figuring out, I mean, it's insane. The calendar now, it's nuts. It's nuts. And it's the same for everybody, but doesn't mean it's like, okay. It makes things riskier. And Josh Heupel went into this season with a tremendous amount of goodwill. And this year, it's smaller. It's smaller than it was a few months ago. That's the way goodwill works. It's not infinite. Mark Stoops is the best coach probably in the history of Kentucky football. And he had a lot of goodwill. It bought him 4 years of crap before they said, that's it. Sorry, no mas. We don't want to pay all this money to get rid of you, but we will. We have to. Look at what happened with Louisville. Look at that embarrassment. Look at the way the end of that season went. Hey, this is enough. So you have goodwill, and he still has some goodwill, but it's smaller than it was, and he's got to go get this right. But I think him staying, I think that's a good thing, because Penn State could have been in a situation, and still could. You never know. But as I said yesterday, Penn State, maybe Heupel's not an upgrade from James Franklin. Maybe he is, maybe he isn't. He hasn't accomplished what Franklin has, but you know, it's different. And Penn State normally wants to they're playing good defense and they're not getting enough points. So what do? What does almost every athletic director everywhere do when they have to fire a coach for results? The guy who comes in is different. If you had a defensive guy and you were bad, you're bringing in an offensive guy. And it's the other way around, you're going that way. You ran the ball too much, guess what? Next guy's going to air raid it. Next guy's going to throw it all over the yard. You threw it too much, you couldn't run worth a flip, you're bringing in a guy who's going to be better on the line of scrimmage and get you better in the run game. You're always reacting to almost always reacting to what you weren't doing before. So if they kept striking out with people, I could see a situation where they go, you know what? at least people will like watching the offense if he's here, so that'll buy us a few years. And you know what? This program plays good enough defense, so the DNA is kind of there, so we can marry that with what he does offensively, and boom, now we can beat Ohio State. Now we can beat Michigan. I could see it. It's not, you don't have to squint too hard to see that. But I think if you're Tennessee, you want to avoid that. There's a good argument to be made that sometimes Tennessee has hurt itself by being too patient. And I understand that. I do. You can't be governed by fear. You can't be – you have to recognize it, but you don't have to be governed by it. So I understand that argument, but I don't think that means that right now you would go do something rash, which I think it would be rash. If there were more coaches on the market, if there were less apex predators out there looking for jobs too, if there were the right kind of candidate in-house to promote and go to a new era, I could understand that. It would be risky as can be. And some would call you insane. But you know what? It doesn't really matter what other people think about you. It matters what you think about yourself and your people and how you perform. So, hey, I get it. But you know what? Look at the hires Danny White makes in every sport. They're offensive people. He wants butts in seats. Offense puts butts in seats. He wants, like, whenever Tennessee moves on from Rick Barnes or he retires and all that, I don't know if you're going to get like a Kim Caldwell-style coach for the men's basketball team, but it's going to be a high-octane, fast-paced offense. I guarantee you, because that's who he hires. He does it in football everywhere he's been. What did he do in baseball just now? Hired one of the best offensive coaches in college baseball. Retained him from the staff because he's one of the best hitting coaches in America. Puts runs on the board. This is what he likes. So if they went and made a hire right now, it would be somebody else whose tenure would be probably settled by how well they built a staff and a group of players defensively. Because they would probably be a coach with an offensive background. So the question would then be, will they trust people enough or will they make good enough hires defensively, get out of the way, let that group do what it does? And then that's what Tennessee would be doing. It would be hiring an offensive-minded coach who what he's doing and his success depends in many ways on how well he can put a staff together and players together defensively. Because no matter who's Tennessee's head coach, or no matter who's Tennessee's assistants are, Heupel's there, it's Heupel's offense. So the success depends on defense and special teams and how well he can recruit staff and players there. That's what I would say there. Speaking of Tennessee basketball, we do need to get to it. We're going to now. Tennessee's got another big game tonight. The Syracuse Orange, which we talked about earlier. Snow up there. It's cold, forbidding, a wasteland, tundra of a place. They're a really good journalism school, though. An excellent journalism school. Really good journalism school. In fact, I would be surprised. We have so many people in here. Do we have a single Syracuse grad in here?
Could be mistaken. I don't believe so.
Because we got most of the other really good journalism schools in this country. We've got at least one from all of them. I don't know if we've had any Syracuse Orange matriculate their way down here. I know there's one who works for one of our competitors, so they do come down here occasionally. But anyways, good journalism school. But best basketball player on that team tonight, Donnie Freeman, is out. And I'm guessing that may have been why the line moved from 6.5 to 7.5 points that Tennessee's favored by now. Syracuse, and it's not just the fact that he wasn't there, it's who they played. But they have not won a game when he didn't play. They have not lost when he did play. He's not playing tonight. So, I'm not very smart, but I think I see a pattern there. 5-0 with, 0-3 without. I see a pattern. However, without him, without the 6'9" sophomore forward, who does average I think about 18 points, 5.3 boards, 2.5 assists per game. A big man who kind of a hybrid forward, can do a lot of things. 6'9", good player. But without him, Syracuse did almost beat Houston, 78-74. And if you're Tennessee, you know how good Houston is. You've seen that. You saw it last year. You saw it again last week. Houston's good. They also lost to Kansas by 11 points. That sounds familiar. It's about what Tennessee did. Tennessee shouldn't have lost to Kansas, but it did. And then the third game in 3 days without Freeman was bad. They got run out of the building by Iowa State. But that was their third game in 3 days, and they're without their best player. So eventually the dam bursts. That's how it goes. But this team is at home. It's always the Carrier Dome to me. I don't even know what they call it now. Out of respect, I should, but it's the Carrier Dome to me. It just is. And it's not one of those deals where, like, people say, well, why do you call it Food City Center? Well, because I cover Tennessee, and I'm not afraid of the phone calls I get if I call it Thompson Bowling Arena, but it's just a headache I don't want to deal with. I can write Food City Center, and it's Thompson Bowling Arena. That's what the building is. You know, that's what it is, but if I say Syracuse is still the Carrier Dome, I don't care what you call it, or if I say the O'Connell Center down in Gainesville is still the O-Dome to me, not the Exec Tech Arena at the O'Connell Center at the whatever 100 names it is. Even if those people do call or email, they'll do it for a day or two. That's it. And then I don't have to see them for a while. So I don't really care. When I call Thompson Bowling Arena, when I call it by its proper old name, which is still part of the name, by the way, and I'm not going to put the two names together. Not doing that. Not hyphenating that. I'm not doing it. Not a single time. Which gets me off on a slightly different. When people start hyphenating their names, I have a concern. While if somebody wants to be called whatever they want to be called, I will call them by their name. I will call them by their official name or their nickname or whatever it is they want to be called. I don't care. It's no skin off my back. The problem is, what if we keep hyphenating names? Where does it end? That's my concern. It's practical because we work in words that we have to write and say. And while now we can stream for as long as we want, we have an internet we can write as long as we want, that's still effort. And if we keep hyphenating things, eventually everyone's going to have 100 names. Do we want to live like that? No, I don't. So again, if you promise me it stops at 2, cool. But then what do you do? Hyphenate 3 names, 4 names? Where does it end? Where does it end? Think of the fingers. Think of the lungs. Nothing is more precious than our time and our attention and our health. Those are 3 things that we can't get back, basically. So, yeah, I'm just saying, that's my PSA. But basically the reason why I'll call it that is they'll complain about it a lot, and I have to work with or around them on a daily basis. And if you can't take criticism or can't take people complaining or can't take people arguing with you, then you need to find another line of work. But it's just pig battles. I'm not picking that. I'll call it Food City Center. That's fine. I don't want to deal with it. But Carrier Dome, that's still a Carrier Dome. You can take that, Syracuse. And if you want to email me or call me every day, I'll just block you. I don't have to deal with you very often. Whatever. But that's where Tennessee's playing tonight. And without Freeman, that line has moved a little bit, and it should. But, fair warning, about one thing that makes me feel really good about this Tennessee matchup is also something that you can't always rely on, which sounds, let's call that what it is. It's talking out of both sides of your mouth. But Tennessee fouls a lot. It fouls too much for Rick Barnes' liking. The way that he wants to coach defense is very physical, and you have to do it a certain way to not get called for fouls. And that's why people for years in football complained about how much holding Alabama and Georgia get away with in the secondary. And I've always said you're looking into that the wrong way, I think. It's not officials protecting brands or officials protecting teams or schools or playoff chances. It's the fact that Nick Saban is the best defensive backs coach who has ever lived in terms of knowing what you can get away with and what you can't. And he taught that to Kirby Smart. They know where officials are looking. They know what officials typically let you do and don't let you do, and they play the percentages. It's well coached. Now, it's still something officials probably should see, but they know what officials really don't want to call. It's like on a Hail Mary play. I don't think I've ever seen a defensive pass interference call on a Hail Mary where if you go back, go watch every Hail Mary you have ever seen in your life, there's at least 2, if not more, people committing flagrant defensive pass interference. But it's not called there. That's one that kind of everybody knows, right? Because officials just don't want to make that call. It's a low percentage play. Do we really want, especially in the NFL, when the ball goes to the 1-yard line, do you really want to do that? No, they don't. They don't. And there's other ways where you can hold and where you can't. And they just know what they're... So Rick Barnes with his defense, it's the same thing. Tennessee plays so physically, but usually right to the letter of the law. The rules of verticality, the rules of when you can and can't have 2 hands on somebody, the places on the court where you can and can't do that, where you can historically get away with a little jersey pulling or a little shove in the back if you do it a certain way and not a different way. They know how to coach that. But you have to go, if you stray from that a little bit, you will get called for a million fouls. And sometimes if an official's just in one of his, if he's on one and he's in a mood, he's going to call all those fouls. And you have to adjust when you're doing that. But this team does too many of those things the wrong way and gets called for too many fouls as a result. So you can't really play the way Tennessee plays unless you do it intelligently enough to not get called for stuff. But long story short, Tennessee's been fouling a little too much. Sometimes opponents get to the line a bit too much. The good news there are 361 NCAA Division I basketball teams. 361. Syracuse is 361st best at the free throw line. It's a really nice way of saying they're last. Out of every team that plays men's college basketball at the Division I level, 361 of them, this is the team that's got trying to apparently scope with iron sights. Like this is almost hard to believe. 57.05% at the free throw line. And that is exactly why they've lost 2 of the games that they shouldn't have lost. They beat Houston full stop if they can hit any kind of free throws. So, yeah. Tennessee, by the way, some people have complained a little bit in some games. Tennessee's 36th out of 361 at the free throw line. Tennessee shoots 77.05%. Very good. Very good. So you're talking about a 20% difference there in free throw shooting. So if Tennessee's deep bench starts to foul a lot tonight, the good news is, historically speaking, not the biggest sample size, but Syracuse can't shoot free throws at all. 57.05%, dude, give me all of that. I'll put my walk-ons out there and have them slap you. Go to the line. Just go. Every time. How many walk-ons do I have? How many freshmen do I have that don't play much? I'll trip you. I'll pull your jersey. I'm not going to gouge your eyeballs or anything, but I'll give you a push. Go to the line. Go shoot 2 free throws. You're only going to make 1 of 2 of them most of the time. I'll take that. 1 point per possession? Dude, you'll win every game basically if you give up that. That's fine. You want to be around 1-1, 1-2. So, yeah, just playing the math there. Now, what's weird about that, though, is that there are some times where stats will lie, or the sample size is too small, or a team that normally can't shoot makes everything it shoots. And that is what, for me, would be the most frustrating thing about being a basketball coach. Basketball, and other sports can be like this, but basketball to me seems like the most extreme example of it, where you can completely outplay a team and lose. You can completely outplay a team and lose. You can match your scouting report to a T. You can make them take tough shots they almost don't make. And some nights, they're just all going in. And that's why the NCAA basketball tournament to me has always been, like, I don't give Rick Barnes a pass historically for his postseason stuff. Like, he should have been to more than one Final Four, period. But there is such randomness to that tournament, and there's such randomness in this sport. To have it come down to a single elimination deal with 64, 68 teams, and it can just come down to luck, not actually which team is better, oh, that would drive me nuts. That would drive me crazy, because there's injuries and things in other sports. Football, sometimes you get away with stuff. Baseball, too. I mean, sometimes you just – a guy who hits 100 hits 2 home runs in a game against you, and you're like, what? He never does this. That happens. But in basketball, it just feels like that happens more. And you can also be the best shooting team in the country, and you can't make anything. Despite great shooters taking open shots, they always make. And that randomness is why people have to be careful during basketball season, even more so than other sports, to not freak out over a game. Like, don't freak out over that Kansas game. Don't freak out over it. That was a good week for Tennessee last week. Not a great week, because a great week you go unbeaten and you beat Kansas because you're better than Kansas, especially without his best player. But the win against Houston meant more than the loss against Kansas, because the win against Houston, you didn't shoot well and you beat one of the best teams in the country. That is not a fluke. If you had random guys, if you'd had Jalen Carey hitting 6 or 7 3-pointers, you'd be like, what? Oh, that's a little weird. That's a little fluky. If Bishop Boswell scores 35 points, you'd be like, he's not usually a double-digit scorer. He got 35 points. That's a little unusual. They didn't shoot great, and they beat Houston. So what happened the next day against Kansas? Kansas had a guy who scores 2.9 points a game score like 15 points. Game of his life. And a senior, too, so not a young guy, a senior. That's just weird. It's just weird. He got hot. He is a Division I basketball player, so he is capable of putting the ball in the bucket, and he did. So I would say that makes me feel really good about Tennessee going into tonight. The fact that one of the things they do the weakest is one of the areas where Syracuse is even weaker. And the fact that without Freeman, one of their better rebounders, Tennessee's size and physicality and the imposing front court Tennessee has should be able to bully Syracuse around. Because Freeman is a 6'9" guy who gets some good boards, and he's not out there. So unless Tennessee just can't make anything, which, hey, we've established that's possible, I still think Syracuse has got to make like 10, 11, 12 threes to win this game. And Syracuse could make that many threes and lose. There's just more ways for Tennessee to win a game like this than lose it, even on the road. But, I mean, we don't really say this before, like, the longer you're in this business, the more you think of it as there's good people everywhere, there's turds everywhere, and the rest of it's colors of laundry. I don't know of a nicer way to put that. But the longer you're in this, the more you see that. The fact that, for instance, like, there are some people at the University of Tennessee who were great. Most of them good people. And there's also some who suck. And then you go down to like Alabama or Georgia, it's the same thing. And doing what we do, you get to see that because you talk to people and you're around all that. But so you're not personally invested. However, I have said many times that I believe Tennessee is a top 10 basketball team, and that even now at 13, Tennessee's ranked just a bit too low. Not disrespectfully low, but a little bit low. And I don't want to be on Cold Takes Exposed. I mean, if you're a sports fan, you know exactly what that is. I've been on there a couple times. All of us have. And I don't want, me to sit there and have a few tweets over the week saying, hey, by the way, I think this team is ranked way too low. And then have those put together, set to Sarah McLachlan music with Old Takes Exposed saying, just, you sure about that, bud? Like, it's not fun. So, yes, I have a slight personal investment in Tennessee going ahead and winning this game because I don't want to look dumb. The last 2 weeks of the football season, by the way, we know how that went. Guess who was 0 for 2 in picking those games? I said this would be an 8-4 team or a 9-3 team, and it was. But the way that it got there, so comical in terms of some of the ones that I got wrong each way. So I got the big picture right. Just the specifics, have been pretty good over the years. Very, very rarely in a football season for Tennessee have I gone into it saying it's going to be this, and it's like way wrong. There have been a couple times, maybe one of those Hendon Hooker years where they were a lot better than I thought they would be. And then there were like the 05 Vols. But I don't count that really because we were all wrong. Literally everybody in Knoxville, everybody outside of Knoxville, the people who live on Mars. If there's anybody out there on Pluto, whether it's a planet or a mini planet or a big star, whatever it is, if there's people out there, they'd be wrong about it. We were all wrong about that team. So I don't feel too dumb about that. But I've just been on a bit of a chilly streak lately on this. Because I said Tennessee loses to Florida and Tennessee beats Vanderbilt. I think we had an entire episode where I just said that. Where I was like, hey, I normally wait till the week of a game to pick, but I'll tell you right now exactly how I think these two games are going to go. Oh, hey. Not great. Not great. The lock of the century of the week. Yeah, it's not good. So I'd like to have a dub. I'd like Tennessee to go ahead and take care of business in this game. And I think looking at it, it's a game Tennessee should win. But if Tennessee goes to Syracuse and it's just a weird night and Syracuse wins, you can be upset. I don't know that you can panic. They still got a lot of big games. They're fine. Now, if you stack losses, then okay, it's a different conversation. But any team going to the Carrier Dome and losing is not the end of the world if that happens. But I think this is a game Tennessee should win. And I think if Tennessee doesn't, like the number of things that would have to come together, I think, like you would have to have Tennessee shoot badly. You would have to have Tennessee turn the ball over a lot. You would have to have Tennessee fouling the opponent too much. Now, those things can happen together. We've seen that with this team and with other teams. But even on top of that, you would have to have Syracuse shooting the ball better than normal. You would have to have Syracuse, because without Freeman, they don't have a single guy who averages, I think, more than like 11 points a game. So teamwork's going to have to make the dream work for Syracuse tonight. Like they got to have some guys do more lifting than usual, and that's basketball, and that's how it goes. But I like Tennessee's chances in that game. But you probably don't want to hear that because I'm not on a heater right now. You do not want these hands on the dice throwing them down the board right now. You just don't. You'd rather go to somebody else. Yeah, you're cold right now. Go warm up somewhere else. I'll put money on somebody else. And I don't bet anyway. But I'm just saying, my picks are usually okay. On a bit of a cold streak. And I also said Tennessee would lose to Houston in basketball, and I said Tennessee would beat Kansas in basketball. So I am on one right now, ladies and gentlemen. I am on one. I am Eeyore right now, raining everywhere I go. Maybe there's something to that seasonal affective disorder. Maybe it doesn't just affect, your mood. Maybe it affects your intelligence. Maybe it just makes you kind of dumb. I mean, I can't think of, let's see, what did I get right? The first game, Tennessee played in Houston, nailed that one. But Rutgers is bad. So that was a layup. Rutgers lost 2 of those first-round draft picks from last season's team. They're not very good right now. bunch of them want their coach gone. That was a layup. That was walking around in. That was uncontested to the rack.
A few weeks back, you successfully called a New Mexico State game.
That's true. Boy, I said Tennessee would pound. I said Tennessee would pound those Aggies of New Mexico State. I said they're going to give the Aggies a what for. They're going to give them a what for. They're gonna. I'll tell you what. They're going to handle those rascals. Got that one right. But so it's just funny because in the notes today, because I actually did some notes again today. Look at that. Look at that. Look at how organized we are over here. I did not put spend final 7 minutes reminding everyone how dumb you are. That wasn't on the rundown. There's a couple things that we're not going to get to today because that's where the conversation went. But I think, honestly, Syracuse, the most recent game it played, it lost by 29 points to Iowa State. But that was the final game they had in that tournament. They'd lost 2 close games to 2 good teams in 2 days, and they didn't have it. I get that. But you would think the way that, for instance, Boswell ended that tournament for Tennessee, he would want to play better than that, and he can, and he needs to, and he should. Or the way that Gillespie, ended that tournament too. Gillespie had a couple of shots that normally he makes. Maybe he's a little tired. 3rd game, 3 days. Houston's a dogfight. I get it. That happens. And I think Boswell, that intentional foul he had it didn't need to be called, but he also didn't need to do what he did. So there were some things in that game that I think, Estrella's still working his way back from injury. I can see why a couple of those things went the way they did, but that's also the most recent performance they had. And we'll end on this because Rick Barnes made what I think is a really, really good point. And yes, it also serves for him right now as a practical quote because it can motivate his team. So it's practical for him to say this, even if it's not true. I do, however, think that it might be true. And he said that after that game against Kansas, he told his team, great quote, he said, I don't know if this team last season could have beaten Houston, but I know this team last season would have beaten Kansas. He said, I don't know if last year's team was good enough to beat Houston because of that matchup. Tough matchup is what it is. I don't know. He said, but I do know that team would have beaten Kansas the next day because that team, even if it maybe didn't have quite the upside that this team potentially has in some ways, it had mature, old leadership that set the tone, and Tennessee won games it was supposed to win. Tennessee never went into games with kind of a mentality of this one's over before it starts. Like that team still went in there and executed. And there's something to be said for a team that maybe doesn't have the high ceiling, but it's got a really high floor, so you know what to expect. And he doesn't quite know what to expect from this team yet. And I think if I'm a player on a team and my coach says that, and everything Rick Barnes says publicly is something he will say privately because there's no difference. One of the only coaches I've ever covered who you will get his honest opinion about a player, whether that player is right here or across the country. Doesn't matter who's there, who's around. You ask him a question, you're getting an honest answer. And if I'm a player on that team, that bothers me. That motivates me. That gets me going, okay, I'll show you. Or I'm saying, okay, you're right, and I got to fix that. Either way, I'm thinking I'm going to fix that. So bottom line, I like Tennessee's chances tonight. But, of course, we'll be here in 23 hours to talk about Tennessee's signing class in football and whether I suddenly got smart or if I'm still dumb. So we'll know that in about 23 hours. Thank you for watching today. Thank you for listening today. And we'll see y'all in about, 23 hours? See ya.